Episode 216. Zach ordered the troops. Lance had other tricks up his sleeve. He had been in the film market for so many years, and he had plenty of ways to deal with the two enemies working together. However, this required time and cost, so it was not worth it. Comparatively speaking, it was the most worth it to be brought over by Zach. If he didn't fight back, he would just sell it to Zach for a small loss. But he would be able to change it immediately, and the trouble would also be thrown to Zach. Although he would lose some money if he sold it, he could just use the time he saved to earn more than double what he lost. With this comparison, as long as he wasn't stupid, he would naturally choose to sell it. Moreover, he knew he couldn't win against Zach. However, he didn't expect Zach to suddenly make such a move. He didn't want to take it anymore. After being surprised, he understood that it wasn't that Zach really didn't want to accept it. He just wanted him to lower his head. After being in the business world for so many years, the thing that Lance was least used to was lowering his head. He didn't have this habit. That was why Zach hung up the phone and did not even greet him. After smiling and putting the phone into his pocket, Zach no longer cared about Lance's matter. It didn't matter. As long as Lance could bear it, he could bear it. In any case, he didn't feel any pain or itch. For 3 consecutive days, Lance didn't call again. However, the situation on his side was indeed a little tense. When the market opened, it stopped, and the assets dropped rapidly. The online shareholders were all cursing. However, he didn't want to do this for the shareholders. The shareholders weren't just fish caught in the pond. After another 7 days passed, the situation slowly came to a stop. There was even a small rebound. Zach was not sure about the specific situation, so he did not pay attention to it. There was only one thing that he paid attention to right now, and that was when Lance wouldn't be able to hold on. But it seems like he really doesn't intend to lower his head. Larry, who had returned from the city, told Zach about this matter. Zach smiled and waved his hand. Impossible. He will lower his head. Hearing this, he understood what Zach meant. Director Marquez means that since there isn't enough grass to crush the camel, we should lend them some? Zach smiled and did not deny it. We have to make him lower his head. How can he not? Such a good donkey, giving us a lot of trouble. We can't let him provoke us for nothing. He can't just leave without doing anything, right? There's no such thing in the world. Zach's smile made Larry feel a little scared in his heart. He knew that the boss was not the kind of person who would be fine after provoking him. The matter of the movie was about the movie. It was one thing. After all, Lance hadn't sent Zach to blow him up with the 4 traffic streams before paying him back. Now that they were talking about buying, it was another business. While they were chatting, Lance called. He picked up the phone, but before he could say anything, Lance asked, "Are you in the company?" This question was very strange. When I'm in the company, can you immediately appear in front of me? Reality proved that it could. In less than 5 minutes, Lance arrived in Zach's office. Zach was drinking tea with Larry when Lance knocked on the door and entered the room. Zach was stunned. "You really came?" Lance looked at Zach and then looked at Larry. Finally, he looked back at Zach. "What if I don't come? Do you think I can't guess that you are going to beat me up and burn me to death with firewood?" Tisk. As expected of Lance, his plan was quite accurate. If it wasn't for the fact that this was his company, Zach would have suspected that Lance had eavesdropped on him. Putting down the teacup, he gestured for Lance to sit down. Then Zach said, "All right, we'll be straightforward. Tell me what to do." Lance did not hide anything either. Purchase the entire stock price according to the current share price and bring your dream film company over as well. After that, my company will still maintain its current name. However, the change in shares and the change in legal personality is actually you. I'll work for you. It was really satisfying. Zach thought that Lance would at least retain some of his shares. He did not expect that Lance would sell all of his shares. As for the company's name, there was a reason not to change. After all, the stock market was in turmoil now. changing the company's name could easily cause misreading. At the very least, if the company was fine, who would change the company's name? Zach knocked on the table twice. After thinking for a while, he said to Larry, "Dream Film Company cannot be merged with your company. We need to walk on two legs, both on the bright road. But in fact, both legs are fine. Do you understand?" Lance thought for a while and then said, "You are very insidious." On the surface, Lance's company was the only one that was bigger than the rest. Dream Film and Television Company was not related to it. However, in reality, the two families were allies that were connected to each other. They shared all the resources, so the one who was beaten up was Lance's company. The one who profited greatly was the Dream Film Company. If they hadn't been bought over, Lance certainly wouldn't have done it. Why should he be beaten up and others pick up the benefits? But after being bought over, it would be Zach taking a beating with his left hand and grabbing with his right. It had nothing to do with Lance. Therefore, after thinking about it, he agreed to this matter. The main objective was finalized. After that, the two of them discussed some other details. After that, Larry went to find someone to type out the contract. Zach, on the other hand, brought Lance along and found Lewis, who was currently in the director's office. After coming to the office, Zach came to Lewis's back with a flattering smile. He rubbed Lewis's shoulders with his hand and said, "Lewis?" Just before he could say anything, Lewis replied, "Your message is not comfortable at all, so just forget about it. If you have something to say, say it." Zach smiled and stopped. He turned to Lance and asked, "How much did those two families pay to beat you up?" He sounded like a gangster on the street, but Lance still understood what Zach meant. $7 billion. After sighing, Zach asked, "Lewis, this person is the boss behind this novel, the one who got beaten up recently." Lewis nodded and continued watching his TV series. "Your scenes are not that good. The plot is getting more and more melodramatic." Lance was speechless. He was talking about the stock market, but Lewis was talking about TV dramas with him. Zach was obviously used to Lewis's way of doing things, so he did not mind. He continued, "Lewis, his company will be ours next. What do you want him to do?" "What do you want him to do?" "But there is a prerequisite. He is now beaten black and blue, so you have to help him get back his face." Lewis glanced at Lance happily and agreed, Sure. Zach knew Lewis would not refuse, so he asked, "How much do you need?" Lewis replied, "You will order the troops." The more Zach commanded, the better. However, Zach was afraid that the old fox would call him if he moved too much, so he said rather sparingly, "Then, let's take 50 billion first." Episode 217, Returning to the Roots. Lance was so scared that he almost stopped. 50 billion? Lance knew that Zach was rich. He knew it from the moment he heard that Zach had taken out $2 billion to throw Dream Film Company together. But he estimated that Zach's assets could at most be 7 to 8 billion. Then, with the original assets of his company, it would be enough to deal with the financial sniping this time. After all, the main business of these two companies was not film, so it was impossible to increase the funds. However, he never would have thought that Zach would throw out $50 billion at once. Furthermore, it seemed like he was very stingy with his search. If he could throw out $50 billion just because he was digging, how could he not dig? What did he want? Lance felt that this was not realistic. He even suspected that Zach was bragging. However, when he saw Lewis nod seriously, he knew that he was not bragging. Lance didn't even know what Zach's family did and why they had so much money. One had to know that the richest man in the country was only about $200 billion, but that was still including the company's shares. Anyone who wanted to take out $50 billion, it was not easy to sell the shares to exchange for money. That was why Lance had a preliminary understanding of how powerful and powerful Zack was. He couldn't help but think about what those people in the circle had told him about the invisible families. He even dared to guarantee that Zack would be one of the invisible families. Even Larry, Lewis, and Jessica were recruited as soon as they said they wanted to. After figuring this out, the small unhappiness in Lance's heart completely disappeared. To be able to work for such a family was truly not shameful. This was much better than the ancient ministers following the emperor. At a certain point, they naturally had to choose to submit. If they did not submit, their heads would be gone. After leaving Lewis's office, they happened to bump into Kate, who came out of the office. Lance had seen Kate's information. He had investigated the dream group before, but when he saw her in person, his eyes couldn't help but light up. Kate walked closer and got to know Lance's identity under Zack's introduction. She took the initiative to stretch out her hand. "Hello, Chief Lance. Recently, Director Marquez had been thinking about you very much. He is thinking about when you, a famous film industry Mongol, will be able to come over to our little place to ask for help. We are looking forward to the stars and the moon, but we are finally looking forward to you." Lance shook Kate's hand politely, and then looked at Zack with a bitter smile on his face. "Director Marquez didn't expect me to come over. He treated me like a camel. He was trying to put a lot of pressure on me. I saw that things weren't good, so I quickly ran over." Kate smiled. "Lance really likes to joke. We, Director Marquez and I, are not that kind of person. He really wants to treat you as a camel. You will also not have the chance to run into our business. From this aspect, this is also a type of rare talent, isn't it?" Lance had never come into contact with Kate before. He only felt that Kate could be the boss because she was Zack's woman. But now, after getting in touch with her, he did not think so. He felt that this woman had a hidden needle in her hair, and it was very piercing to the hand. It was the kind of gentle touch that could be done with a special set of skills. If he wanted to use force, he would definitely bleed. He looked at Kate and then looked at Zack. Lance took half a step back. "No wonder the two of you are able to walk together. Both of you are very powerful." Zack smiled. "Lance, you must be joking. We are all honest people. We are all from the countryside. We are honest in our bones." Lance pursed his lips. "Forget it. You are honest. I have never seen anyone less honest than you." After half a month, Lance's company had completely calmed down. The two new elites who had come menacingly had been attacked from behind by a large sum of money. In the end, they could not withdraw the funds they had been fighting with Lance. They were very anxious and wanted to beat Lance to death as soon as possible. They could not kill him. They wanted to retreat, but Lance refused to let go. In the end, $3 billion was bitten off from his back, and more than $400 million was extorted by Lance. This was barely enough. When Lance, who was now under Zack's leadership, saw this result, he couldn't help but praise Lewis's means. At the same time, he was glad that he didn't continue to argue with Zack. Otherwise, he would have been eaten alive by Zack. The leader was sinister, and the people below were also sinister. It was really a headache to encounter such an opponent. But now, he did not need to have a headache, because they were already his comrades. If the comrades beside him were such wolf-like comrades, then it was simply too comfortable to do things. Therefore, he felt very comfortable. It was nothing more than losing the name of a big boss. He was the one in charge of the company. And most importantly, he had the possibility of advancing further. Larry had answered a question of his when he was drunk, when he was receiving him. At this time, he turned and asked, "Why didn't you set up your own company?" Larry answered with his tongue out, "What do you know?" Lance, on the wine table, did not understand what Larry meant by this, but it only took him a little longer to really get the meaning. He wanted to be the head of a very wealthy and powerful family. He wanted to be a subordinate of someone like that as well. Lance's company had been settled, and the matter had also been settled. it had become a company under Master. Master Pictures was also handed over to Jessica, and its development was quite rapid. With these two legs, the film industry under Zack's hands developed quite rapidly. It could really be said to be progressing at a rapid pace. The filming on director Hamilton's side also went very smoothly. In just 2 short months, the filming was nearly completed. The filming was only completed. The post-production, editing, and so on still needed some time, but this was undoubtedly very good news. So on the day of the filming, Zack took a plane and rushed to the set. Everyone was very happy, including Teacher Chester, whose complexion looked much better. Director Hamilton repeatedly expressed, "It's really hard on Teacher Chester. He has the most lines, and he never has to mention words. During the day and night, he always spins. He won't let go of scenes that he can pass. He insisted on shooting a few more lines. He will choose the best of the best." Chester's dedication spirit infected the entire crew. He had participated in the filming with such great effort, even though he was seriously ill. Other people had no reason to slack off. Zack wanted to personally visit Teacher Chester. He wanted to meet the great contributor of the crew. He was also the pillar of support for the soul. However, when he mentioned this point, he was told that Professor Chester had returned to the city last night. Zack was slightly stunned. He had a bad premonition in his heart. As the saying goes, return to the roots. Chester was in such a hurry to return to the city. He only hoped to accompany his family for a period of time and had no other intentions. However, the bad premonition in Zack's heart quickly turned into reality. At the celebration banquet, just as Zack was about to raise his wine glass and thank everyone for their hard work, his phone rang. After that, Mariah's sobbing voice sounded. "Zack, let's go." The wine glass in Zack's hand fell to the ground at that time, like a glass of wine to an old man who was heading west. Episode 218, A Perfect Actor. Chester left. When he returned home overnight, he told his son and daughter-in-law that he was too tired and wanted to rest for a while. After this rest, he never opened his eyes again. Although there was a professional medical team following behind, they were still unable to take the old man's life from the hands of death. Regarding this, Chester's son had long been prepared. Before this, the doctor had told him that the old man could die at any time. The funeral ceremony began on the 3rd day after Chester's death. Zack, Lance, Director Hamilton, and all the others all rushed over. There were many movie stars present, but most of them were veteran actors. They were extremely sad about the old man's death. The venue was also filled with wreaths. There were many people and units who were mourning. They had never been rich before they died, and they felt even more sorrowful after they died. Regarding this Chester, everyone really liked him. Later on, the Red Cross also came over. Apart from bringing wreaths, they also brought donations. The $80 million that Zack gave, Chester still donated in the end. Chester's son said to Zack, "My dad left a message. This money will build a few more schools for the children. It's better than being rich for our family." The contract stipulated that if Chester donated the money, Zack would stop filming the movie. Therefore, Chester would finish filming the movie first and then donate the money. This way, Zack would not be able to stop, even if he wanted to. He looked at the benevolent and smiling Chester in the black and white photo. Zack really did not know how to evaluate it. After thinking for a while, it seemed that the only evaluation of a perfect actor could be used to evaluate Chester, not only in terms of acting, in terms of professionalism, but also in terms of character. They were all perfect. After the funeral ended, Zack went to find Chester's son. "I heard that you and Chester's sister-in-law work as foreign translators, and your son studies abroad? All right, I'll arrange for you to work overseas. This will make it convenient for you and for you to take care of your child." Chester's son did not agree at first, but it was Zack who took out $80 million for him. to weigh the pros and cons. That was why he chose the former. He was not greedy for money in his family. He only wanted a clear conscience. Before he left, Zach asked, "If you still want to sell this old house, then sell it to me. If not, can you leave me a set of keys? When I have the chance, I will come over and chat with Chester." Chester's son shook his head. "We won't sell the house. We want to keep it as a memento, but we will give you the keys." Zach was in a bad mood after he took the plane back home that night. He originally thought that he could make a good movie and get everyone in the world certification for the Golden Award. Then, he would use this certification to tell Chester that their persistence was worth it. It was worth it for them to put their lives on the line. But now, before the late stage was even completed, Old Man Chester had already left. This made Zach feel very disappointed, and his heart felt empty. Kate understood what had happened, so she could also understand Zach's current mood. She gently squeezed into Zach's arms and hugged him. "When we get the award, we can comfort Chester's soul in heaven." Zach replied and did not say anything else. He just tightly hugged Kate. At this moment, the phone rang. Zach did not want to answer the phone, but Kate looked at the screen for him. "It's Zena." Zach could not answer other people's phone calls, but Zena's phone had to be answered. God knew if she had suffered some grievances in the family. After answering the phone, Zena's voice came from the phone. "Brother, it's almost Christmas. Are you back?" Zach thought that there was something wrong, so he replied, "No, I'm quite busy." Zena said, "Oh," and there was a slight disappointment in her voice. So Zach then added, "Let's celebrate the new year. I'll go back after the new year. It's not even 2 months." With this, Zena's voice was filled with joy again. After that, she started to talk about the family matters. Everything else was normal. There was nothing strange about it. There was one thing that was very strange. Kyle and Karen divorced. Manser also left with Karen. I don't know where he went. Kyle didn't ask grandfather to not care. It's so strange. This matter was indeed a little strange. After all, Manser was the grandson of the Marquez family. He actually allowed Karen to take him away. It was fine if Kyle didn't ask, but he didn't even ask the old fox. Even Zena muttered over the phone, "Although I don't like Manser, at least Manser is a child of the Marquez family." Zach laughed a few times. "Well, if the old fox doesn't ask, then it's hard to say." Zena asked him, "What do you mean? I don't understand." Zach replied, "It's nothing. I'm guessing blindly. It's meaningless." After that, Zach and Zena chatted for a while longer, and then hung up.